Welcome back. The New York City Department of Health, in partnership with Social Impact Design Studio, they're designing the We, is opening the exhibit Undesign The Redline, an interactive exhibit about redlining in New York City, focusing on the impact of this practice in the Bronx. To learn more about this, we welcome Fernando Tirado, Director of Initiatives at the Bronx Action Center. Thank you so much for joining us,
welcome.
Fernando.
Thank you for having me.
So, for those, I want to jump right in and talk about the topic, redlining. For those who may not understand the topic or what it's about, tell us a little bit about it.
So the name of the exhibit is called Undesign The Redline. Redlining was a practice funded by the government in the 1930s to create opportunities for people to get housing, but that actually led to a institutionalized structural racism that continues to play its part today.
And why did you decide that this was the right time to bring on this exhibit?
So I'm actually the facilitator for the borough's hashtag Not62, the campaign for a healthy Bronx.
Yes.
The reason why it's called hashtag Not62 is because the Bronx ranks last in health outcomes and health factors in the state, and has ranked last since the report came out by the RWJ Foundation. One of the things that has an impact on health are the social and economic determinants of health: housing, education, crime, how you perceive your neighborhood. And redlining is that structural racism that has had a direct link to health inequities here in the Bronx and among other neighborhoods and other cities.
And this was predominantly happening in the Bronx?
No, this was actually a nationwide policy where cities were disinvested by having people move out into the suburbs. They were some places were blockbusted. Just by the very fear that a black person or a person of color would move into your neighborhood, speculators would try to get you to sell your home for very cheap, and then to move into the suburbs and sell you that house at a much more expensive rate, and then sell that same house that they bought to a person of color at an exorbitant rate with exorbitant loan practices. So,
and we could see the effects that it's had from then to where we are now. What do you think is being done to fix that, to try to fix that?
Well, I would say that not much has been done, right? Not into the 1970s did we have the Community Reinvestment Act come in to try to undo that. But those communities that had experienced redlining experienced a massive amount of trauma, emotional trauma. And that trauma goes back all the way until the early days of this country, where slavery was institutionalized, and so redlining was institutionalized. It was that covert or that subtle racism that has led to these health inequities, and that's what we're trying to point out with this exhibit. We want people to come and take a look at the exhibit to see the timeline from slavery and discrimination amongst Native Americans or First People nations, Hispanics, African Americans, from the 1800s until today. Likewise, there's a parallel timeline of the people who fought against that, of the people who tried to make a difference, from the abolitionists to Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
And so we want to show that timeline and show how redlining has had an impact on health and in creating health inequities. I'd also like to point out that not everybody's going to perceive this exhibit the same way. Some people are going to get very angry because it's a very sensitive topic. Some people are going to be inspired to do something, and that's what we want. We want the conversation. We want to see how we could undesign the red line by creating an ecosystem where we all have shared values and shared dreams, and that we can all live together. As how previous speaker was mentioning about how we need to create a better world for our children and for ourselves.
Definitely. We've seen how Not62, how that initiative has impacted the Bronx. We have more parks now. There are more activities for children to get into, so that they're outside playing, and better foods are being introduced into the schools. But what exactly, and I guess this is the conversation you're saying that is being started, but has anything been created to help the communities who were affected by this? By the redlining? So
as I mentioned, this is happening at the Bronx Neighborhood Health Action Center. And so the Action Center, located at 1826 Arthur Avenue, is a community hub. It's not just about promoting good health behavior, but about storytelling, telling the story of how health inequities have been institutionalized into our communities so that we can find a way together to address that. So, for instance, we part of the Not 62 campaign focuses on mental health and mental health first aid training, how to deal with the opioid overdose crisis. Talks about workforce development and talks about entrepreneurship among minority women business enterprises. So it's well, we do a lot of health and a lot of health promotion at the Action Center, but we talk about those social and economic determinants of health, which are really the leading cause of the poor health outcomes that we have in the Bronx. And that is, again, all tied into the structural racism that has existed in this country and in the city for a very long time.
For those who are watching, and I'm sure many people are interested in this, because I would definitely want to change what has happened with the redlining. If I was in that community, and I am in that community, my family's in the community, I would want to say, what can I do? But for someone sitting at home who's wondering, me as an individual, what exactly can I do to change things?
Well,
if they're thinking I'm just one person.
So what redlining actually did was, as I mentioned earlier, it created this mass trauma among communities. And in order to undo that, we have to look at how do we heal communities, right? How do we build a sense of social cohesion? How do we become neighbors again? How do we look out for one another and look out for our common interests and get beyond fictitious designations such as race and color and ethnicity? At the end, we're all human, and we all have to fight for our humanity. And what we want to do is tell that story through this Undesign The Redline.
Excellent. And tell us when this will be happening. It's taking place at the end of January, correct?
It starts January 30th. We have a reception at 5 p.m. at the Neighborhood Health Action Center. And it'll take place every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. But we do have 2 Saturday events. One is February 17th, and the last one, or the last day of the exhibit, is Saturday, March 10th.
Excellent. Please note, for those of you watching at home, that it is January 30th. It's not January 20th. Just a typo there, but it will be starting on January 30th from 5 to 7 p.m., correct?
Correct.
And where is it going to be taking place?
At the Bronx Neighborhood Health Action Center, 1826 Arthur Avenue, just south of East Tremont Avenue.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Fernando. Definitely a conversation that needs to be had. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We have to take a quick break, but stay tuned for more Open.